Hi, and welcome back to Rose Connections. I'm Janet Rose, and today is a Radical Reflections Day. And Radical Reflections are all about that discovery of self, that self-inquiry. And I always liken it to climbing your own mountain. I'm a Colorado girl, so of course I go with Colorado and mountain themed. This is not Colorado, but mountain themed types of imagery in that way. And so for me, radical reflections are simply about knowing yourself. And one of the ways that I have always conceptualized knowing myself started right around the time that I was a sophomore in high school. I think that's a critical time of development for all of us. And I remember being very, very challenged and feeling like, all of these, I was super uber duper Catholic, and having all of these new philosophies being thrown at me and coming at me from all directions. I remember describing to my teacher that it felt like a wrecking ball coming through these towers of self that have been created for me by my parents and by my community and by society at large and by the various identities that I bore, whether I understood them or not. And specifically, I remember it was when we were reading Siddhartha that I really felt the most challenged because I found myself agreeing with so much about Buddhism. There's so much Buddhism that I have integrated into my practice now. Not anything would never claim it to be actual Buddhism because it's just kind of inspired by in a lot of ways, but it's inspired by that as much as Catholicism. But back then it was just Catholic only, and I had these blinders on that were forcing me to see only one aspect of humanity and only one aspect of faith and only one aspect of life's big moral and ethical questions. Back then, I would have, I won't say I was more conservative, but I was definitely more trusting of authority, for example, than I probably am today. Um, but when all of these different authorities were coming through as these wrecking balls in my life, I remember my teacher at the time, Sally Keller, who I'm just going to send this to her directly because she'll be tickled by this. Um, I remember, her telling me to, go further with that imagery, like really describe it. Describe the bricks that make up your tower. What does the decor look like? What is it? How is it structured? What is the framework that has been provided for you to nurture and house you over all this time? And so that was such a very helpful way for me to view a crisis of faith as describe what was created for you. And yeah, that wrecking ball has come through and it's left all this destruction, and you could sit there and bemoan all the destruction, or you could take a look at the fact that it loosened some bricks that maybe don't belong there anymore. It has afforded you the opportunity to reconstruct yourself in a way that's more authentic to who you really are and what you really believe. This is a wonderful opportunity. And so I used that as an opportunity. And I remember really feeling like it was, okay, that wrecking ball came through and I could just rebuild it in the same shape of Catholicism, in the same shape of my really insular community. Or I could use this opportunity to expand my view. I could put in some more windows. I could just put in a new prefabricated structure and go from there. And it forced me to have to sit with that I think really wonderful skill and really develop that skill set of being able to take each of those bricks that fell apart when the wrecking ball came through and say, does this belong? Does anti-choice belong in my tower? You know what? No, it doesn't, because I believe, I'm pro-choice. Does this belong here? Humility. You know what? Yeah, that's still who I am. That's still really important to me. So yeah, that one stays. And you sift through all of the rubble to find what's still usable, what's still a good reflection of you, and what's not. What's beyond repair or so infected with somebody else's opinion of you that this is a really good opportunity to just put that into the trash pile. And then you reconstruct yourself. You reconstruct your world. You reconstruct this structure that had been created for you by your parents and caregivers and families of origin, your communities, the popular ideas in society at your time. And you are housed in this tower of self that increasingly, as we grow, as we outgrow these towers with our own beliefs, and as wrecking balls and challenges come through to assert themselves and force us to change, we discover more of who we actually are in the process. And for me, that was one of the most empowering messages I could have gotten growing up. And in that same year that I was in this honors philosophy course, I was a sophomore in a senior level course, I also went to National Hispanic Institute, to the Lorenzo de Zavala Youth Legislative Session. And the founders of NHI, Ernesto Nieto and Gloria de Leon, were instrumental in really changing my life. And it's funny, I was talking with my mom about that the other day, that she said you walked into NHI timid and, impressionable, willing to go wherever someone else led you. And you walked out of there a leader. And you walked out of there confident and secure in who you really were. And willing to vocalize that to anyone and to stand up for that. And that was such a huge eye-opening experience. I would have called that, yes, a life-changing experience, but to see how my mom viewed that shift in me during that time was really, really a gift of perspective that I really needed, and a new facet of this memory that I had. Because at NHI, they broke down, that was the wrecking ball that broke down towers of whiteness. Not to say that they're gone, because they are still there, because no matter how much you try to unroot whiteness and white supremacy, it always sneaks back in, and we have to be always vigilant. And we always have to dig deeper to unroot sort of the rot of those foundations. But they broke down a lot of walls that had been created by whiteness that was preventing me from seeing myself as Chicana, and preventing me from really understanding my responsibility to stand up for my own community. Those were blinders that had been placed on me, not by my family per se, because I grew up Mexican in so many ways, but was definitely placed on me by how other people viewed my whiteness. It afforded me levels of protection, barriers of protection that were no longer relevant when I was with NHI. My whiteness was not going to protect me from facing the responsibility of my own truth, which is that I'm Latina. And I have a responsibility to be a leader for that community, for any community that I touch. And that shifted me away from just reconstructing what was coming down in this Catholic part of my life with just another structure. I think a lot of people, when they leave Catholicism or when they leave whatever faith they've been brought into, they have a tendency to just go in one door, out one door, and into someone else's. And they go inhabit a Methodist church or a Buddhist, temple. And that's wonderful. That's their authentic journey. But one of the things I've learned over the years, studying sociology and studying group dynamics and studying identity and struggling with my own identities on so many different levels, is that the labels that we bear are not always a reflection of who we really are. So even if I say I'm Catholic, I know what I mean when I say that, but you don't. You don't know that my version of Catholic has nothing to do with dogma as much as what I value about my Catholicism is entirely about the sensation of spirit, about using all of your senses to engage with your faith. And that for me is what the Mass was always about, was engaging all of your senses at once. It's something that I still need to this very day. So which is true, that I'm Catholic or that I need that holistic integration of my full humanity in what I do? This one became less relevant because I started outgrowing it, because this was the truth. The truth of my life has been that when you peel away all of the labels, what's left behind? Because ultimately, when those wrecking balls come through, they're breaking through barriers of layers of labels. Of labels that we have borne because of other people's opinions of us. And just as our families have created these towers of self for us to house us, did I say families of self? Families of origin have created for us. We too have decorated them, have decorated the interior with whatever other people have told us should be there. Sure, we get some things of our own. Maybe I have a purple couch that is mine that I just really love, but it really clashes with the yellow walls that people have painted with telling me how self-centered I am. And maybe the stairs leading up to the Tower of Catholicism are shaped that way, not because they're the most efficient, but because they're the most punishing. Because I'm not a good enough Catholic, or I'm not a good enough whatever. So our towers also are imbued with what others have told us we should feel or experience about our own lives. And that to me is probably the most insidious of them all. Because ultimately, we are making other people the authorities on what our own lives are. We're letting them become our interior decorator. We didn't even ask them to. They just came in and threw up all of their opinions everywhere. And I mean, threw up all of their opinions everywhere. And are making us deal with the mess. And after a while, enough people do that, enough people create a mess in that tower that has been created for you, or that you have also painstakingly tried to create for yourself, it weighs you down until you finally just decide, okay, fine, I'll just do it your way. One of the most definitive things about Janet Rose is I'm always going to do things my way. Lots of people don't like that. But I have found over the years, I am just more effective when I can take things from my own unique perspective, apply my own unique framework to it, to understand it, to synthesize all of that information, all of that data, all of that stimulating opinion, and consolidate it into what is the most useful for me, for my mission, for who I am, for the world I envision. And how much of that is really my truth versus the truth I integrated that is actually belongs to somebody else. And so as I kind of wind down here, the whole reason I bring this up is because, number one, it's just been on my mind a lot recently. But because some towers came down when my dad and my grandpa died. Two major masculine influences in my life. Two very different influences in my life. Very different men. And so when you go through loss of someone that has been important to you in your life, you feel like your tower has come down. Ooh, that is the Tower card from tarot. And this is why I talk about tarot a lot, is I relate it back to this tower idea that started when I was in high school, before I had even been exposed to tarot cards ever in my life. This had already been a thing for me. So when I found tarot years and years later, what really convinced me was the Tower card. A card that brings fear into so many people, because you see the lightning bolts, the wrecking balls coming through and forcing change. Because when a wrecking ball comes through our tower of self, that's forcing us to wrestle with this idea of who we really are. Because even when we construct the tower into the form of who we really are, we grow and shift over time. We outgrow that tower and we become our own wrecking balls in some ways. And so the more that we can take ownership over that process and start viewing those wrecking balls of change as a moment of opportunity to really assert, this is what belongs in my life and this is what doesn't. This is the baggage I'm willing to accept, and the baggage that I know I just need to unpack. And this is the stuff that everyone else has dropped at my door, expecting me to deal with their stuff. Their opinions about my weight are opinions about their own weight. Their opinions about my sexuality are opinions about their sexuality. They're not about me. They're being viewed through this lens that is malinformed, that is hanging on for dear life in their own towers that are suffering wrecking balls. I don't have to attach that in what I create next. And so that's a radical reflection, because we're shifting the mirror just slightly to see a different aspect of truth to who we are. To just shed the extra expectation and authority that people decide to take in our lives. Be intentional about who you are. Be clear about who you are. And recognize that the labels are just a start. They're just a sketch. You are the one who defines the color and the dimension. You are the one who gets to define what that means for you. And the challenge that we all have, that someday I'll cover in probably another relationship reboot, is how do we convey that to others? But for right now, it's enough that we just start parsing out and pulling out those threads of our wrapped up in our foundations that are no longer reflective of who we are. The threads that have been binding us down and holding us small and keeping us contained in this one little tower that was created for us. We're bigger than that now. And we can't shine brightly when we're being contained in such a small space. So part of the courage of a radical reflection is being able to transform that into powerful, self-reflective information, so that you just know what is you and what's the environment around you, so that you understand how you impact the environment and vice versa. So with all of that said, I'm going to be radically honest, and that I am not on a schedule for making these videos. I work actually much better when I'm on sort of an inspiration sort of thing. So I might go for days at a time where I can't even think about these videos, and then a full day where I record like 8 of them. So I'm going to try to get these on a little bit more of a predictable schedule for you all, but you can always count on the fact that I'm going to go in order from Radical Reflections, Relationship Reboot to Radiant Resilience, and probably some topic in between once I kind of get rolling with things. So there'll be other topics here and there as we go, maybe interviews with other professionals or people who have inspired me over the years. And I'm just so grateful that you are watching these videos, that you're sharing them. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I am so very, very grateful you find value in this. Thank you again. And I am going to start opening up some more training slots, some more, I do Radical Reflections readings because I did mention tarot. So I do these things too. So that is going to be on my website soon to book those types of readings with me, but also booking coaching sessions and professional consultations. I'm finally getting a little bit more adept at getting that scheduling down for folks. So please feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe, all of those fun things. I really look forward to our next time together.